So hey everybody, we are behind door 13 and I'm here with Tanmayo, and I'm so honored to be here with you, Tanmayo, on your birthday in the 13th gate. And for me, you're somebody who's been, as long as I've been in the Gene Keys, I've always seen you kind of by Richard's side, and somebody that always been there in all the Venus sequence and all the programs. So it's just so, it means so much to me to be here with you, and especially that you're taking time on your birthday.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. It's a special year somehow for me. I have been in the body for 65 years this year. And it's kind of curious because people often ask me, well, how old are you? Which I think is a kind of really wild question. I want to say, well, are you asking my biological age, my emotional age, my cosmic? It's like I immediately feel that there's a label going to be put around me. But this morning, I feel like I'm feeling really good about the fact that I've managed to stay here and keep breathing and not opt out, because there have been times where I've thought I'm not truly still in this game. So yeah, it's kind of nice. And I'm also entering into an 11 year for me. So in the numerology, I'm a 2911. So, and there is also this sense of the 65 and this 11, which
Wow.
ties in a lot with so much of the Gene Keys work too.
Right. Yeah, so you are 13/6 life's work, which is today actually. And I feel, I feel like that's my radiance. So I think that is also part of when I remember crying when you were doing with Elijah, and you were speaking about the life's work, and you were speaking about listening through love. But it was not what your words, it was just how you like embodied it on the video call, which was strange. But I remember sitting backstage somewhere and actually crying, but crying just like those silent tears that comes from probably listening through love.
There's something really, the listening, I really notice over the years that the 13 is also about really paying attention to the education that you're being offered from your past, so that you don't get stuck there in all of the emotional drama. And when I look back, one of the things I see about the life work, and I think this is true for everyone, is it might appear that you're doing something vastly different in your life now, like than maybe when I was 16 or 14, and those very younger years. And I used to sing in bands as a young person. And I look back now, and sometimes we would be in some big venue, and I noticed that there would always be this place in me where I used to just naturally see a trouble spot. So I could look at it and say, well, I was looking for it, or maybe I was looking for the discordant note. But I see there was a discerning aspect to it. So very often in that table, there'll be too much alcohol, and maybe, when you're the singer, sometimes, you're the one up front and you get some, whatever kind of energy that comes towards you. And I used to include them. When in between the music, I would say, hey, what about these guys down here? Or I would talk to the table and say how fantastic they were. And once they were included, there was no more discord.
Right.
So I mean, but this, as we talked, I'm a 6'2", so my second line has no idea what I'm doing. That's the beauty of that the listening is so beyond anything that I can even put words to, which I'm sure you're familiar with. I mean, even to say, Richard writes about it as listening with the whole body, but years before I met Richard or Gene Keys, I remember saying to this guy who said something to me, and I said, well, I don't listen with my ears. And that was like one of those things that just came out of my mouth. It was so curious. I don't listen with my ears. So there's that quality to the 13 that when there's that depth of surrender, when you move deep inside and you've become familiar, with the with the emotional drama, and I had lots of it in my young life, lots of emotional drama, because the 13 has that beautiful relationship with the 30, that ring of purification. And I mean, I went through a stage in my life where it was all about desire, just bring it on, in every kind of way, lots of physical touch and sensuality and sexuality, and just the complete joy of the body, which would also get me in lots of trouble because I wasn't really listening. But at the same time, that's what was needed then for the growth. And then at some point, coming to a place in me that said, this is not what I'm actually looking for. I was looking for the connection and the touch. But what I was really looking for was that intimate connection, that heartful union, which can only be found inside. And until I could find it inside, I was never going to find it. And that's, excuse me, I now have a dog who's going to be nuts.
Yeah, I see that you have the G center open, and that's where you have the 13th, and you have it twice. It's also your vocation. So I'm thinking that it can be in the young year, especially as a 6-2, before the Saturn return, that you're looking outside yourself. And I'm seeing you have the 29, which is the programming partner to the 30th. So that desire and that, that's your conscious moon, and it's also your Pluto on both sides. So you have that 29, 30, 29, 30, where you're looking for, devoting yourself to something that might not yet be who you truly are. Do you feel like having the 13-3 in your vocation, your core wound, that how is it to have the same gene key in your vocation and in your life's work? Have you been, have you felt into that relationship?
Very powerful. I mean, I see that. I mean, I don't know whether, I think this is written somewhere on the Gene Keys website, or I've mentioned it before. As a very small child, my grandparents were of the old ways, so they left school when they were 11 and 13 years old. But they had this deep connection with the land, and it was like they were all, everything was all inclusive in the turn of the cycles for them both. They had a wisdom that was nothing to do with being formally educated, which I think was very good for them. So I remember being in the garden with my grandmother, and she was looking at me one day, and I don't know how old I was. I was maybe 4 or 3 or 5. I really don't remember that. But she looked at me and she said, "Look where your other burn." So where I come from in Scotland, we speak Doric. It's kind of a mixture of Gaelic and English. And so she said, "Look where your other burn," which means look with your other eyes, child. So I was looking, and suddenly what I was seeing, of course, was the devas. I was seeing the energy around the plants. I was seeing in behind the veil. And then she would just smile at me, and that was all that would be said. So it became a very natural thing for me to be communing in other dimensions. But when you think of that as a core wound, and the greatest talent, growing up at a time where, and in cultures where this was not seen as, something you kept to yourself. And I think I was maybe nearly 20 before I realized that when people were talking about fairies, they actually weren't talking about fairies. They were talking about a picture they'd seen or something they'd read in a book. So this listening to me became way beyond what was being spoken. So I started to hear what was being spoken from behind the veil. That there was a great wounding around it too, because what I started to recognize was that there was a lot of my nature of being that didn't appear logical.
Right.
So if I take it back to the 13, this discord, it's like a discordant note. But there's an old way of saying it too. It's like your heart is not in a chord. So it's a disheartened experience. But when it's covered with a lot of melodrama and emotionality, then of course it comes out as resentment, hostility, and a pushing away, rejection, depending what else you've got there in your chart.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to feel that disheartened experience of that I didn't quite fit, I don't belong. There's something, I'm just off center. So it's taken a long time for that healing of that core to really be really present in my everyday life as something I share with anyone, whether they like it or they don't like it. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the 13th and the 7th, it's the discord and the division. And then it says in the 6th line in the evolution, it says breaking out of compromise by believing, your own dream. And that's, I guess that was when you're the only one seeing fairies, I guess. Then you are kind of divided away, and it's you kind of have to compromise that nobody else is seeing the fairies.
Yeah, so talking to spirit was kind of like a comfort in a way, because I felt so separate. Right. So it was much easier to be at home in the realms, or to speak to the angels or see spirit, or things like that were just very, very normal and comforting, and speaking to humans was a bit more challenging. But I love that you mentioned the discord and division, because I think that that's something that was a powerful healing opportunity for me in that. And I hear it a lot in the spirit, we'll call it the spiritual community, whatever that is, the consciousness movement around the planet, where there tends to be this them and us idea, those of us who are on the path, and those of us who are not on the path, or those of us who are awake and those of us who are asleep. And I hear that with those languages sometimes as division, it's like, and there's some place for me that it's either all God or it's not. It's like, it's that deep understanding that I don't know the higher soul purpose of everything that is going on this planet, but I know that whether we want to call it the quantum field or goddess or whatever word we want to use, it's all in its perfection in the moment. So whilst I'm busy with them and us, I feel like I'm just inviting that separation energy again.
Right. And I'm thinking, speaking about human design, we would say that having hanging gates in an open center, then it's less consistent, and we are more influenced by everything that comes from the outside. So when I look at your life's work, your evolution, you have that in an open G center, and then you have your radiance and your purpose, which is on the design side. You have that in your throat center, in your ajna, that are defined. And I can also see that you have the 43. You have it in your SQ, and you also have it in your personality Saturn. So what I'm kind of wondering is that 43 seems so like powerful because it's your design sun, but it's also your Saturn, and it's also your SQ. So is there something, if you would like, not compare, but if you would look at the 13 and the 43, like, I guess, do they have a relationship to each other, like insight and discernment, or epiphany and empathy? How do they relate to each other for you?
I think the biggest thing I would share about that is the 43 is with that deafness. And deafness can be to me, every shadow has a gift, and every gift has a shadow. There's nothing homogenized in gene keys, that we can all have the same keys, but we are so unique in how they express through us. But what I really came to see that there's qualitative listening, or real subtleties of discernment. And I've suffered the pain of not listening, and also of not speaking, and also with the 43 of speaking when I should be quiet. So all of these have been educations. But the most beautiful thing, I think, this is a super practical thing for me around the 13 and the 43, is that I've started to really recognize, in my very close relationships. So I think one particular experience with my ex-husband a long time ago, and at the time we had just moved to Australia, and we had a 7-day business. And this happened purely because he was in the oil industry, and there was a big drop in the oil industry around the world. And remember, this is before internet and everything else. So his consulting, he said, if we do this and make this move to Australia now, you know, it's going to be hard for me to get work. And we had all these plans in order. And I said, okay, I'm going, you stay, you do whatever, but we need to go. So we had a shop. And we had a house close to this shop. And he was complaining a lot about this house, you know, quack, quack. And I'm thinking, what, you know, all I heard was this, you know, for about, 6 months later, complaining about this house. And I went to a workshop, actually, this is about 86 or 87. And I went to a Myers-Briggs workshop. And I was listening to this guy in this workshop, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's my ex-husband. This is So I went home and I said to him, I said, are you unhappy in this house? And he went crazy. Are you crazy? I've been saying this to you for weeks. And I said, actually, no. What I have been hearing for weeks is that you're complaining about this house. And to me, that's the difference between hearing and listening. Mm. So this man, he wasn't used to using emotional words to express his unhappiness. He was just, that was his way of saying, I want to, but he hadn't said, I want to move. He was just complaining about the house. But the deeper listening was to hear, he's actually unhappy in this house. Right. It was on the market the next day. Mm. You know, but I hadn't received him. I was listening to the words, hearing the words, but not listening.
Right.
You know? So that deafness, it's great to feel as a 43 that it's, you know, just blocking out all the white noise, you know, and we hear our own distant drummer. But there's a very real part of it to open to hear who is actually in your space. So that takes the beauty of that 13 to really listen even more into that acoustic nature of the field itself, but very much to who I'm spending time with right now. What are they really saying to me, you know?
Yeah. And there is this thing that we hear a lot about being an empath and taking into so much and being with people that are, you know, narcissistic. And when I look at your design, you have so much openness. You only have the ajna and the throat that are defined. So you would be, you know, the perfect victim for that. And at the same time with the listening. But I feel like you might have something else than that as an explanation for being that open and having the 13th, how it is and what it is, you know, how to discern what to take in and how to maybe, you know, purify or let it go right through you. How have you related to being that open in your life?
Well, you know, somewhere again in the 80s, I went to a particular workshop. And on the second day of this workshop, I had something that I came to understand was a migraine. I'd never had anything like it. And I was just floored, in so much pain. And it was one of these bodywork type workshops, and there was quite a few chiropractors, and, you know, they wanted to put their hands on me or correct me. And my friend who was with me, I said, whatever you do, keep those people away from me. You know, I knew that not to let anybody touch me, but I had no idea what was going on. And one of the workshop leaders came to my friend and she said, you are going to have to get her out of here. She's channeling the energy of the group. Mm. I didn't even know what that was then. You know, what does that mean? You know, so, but I knew I had to get out of there because I was in so much trouble. So we got in the car and we drove maybe 15 minutes down the road, and my friend needed petrol. So we stopped at the service station. I stepped out of the car and it was like, there had never been anything wrong with me. And there was an old dog sitting right across from the Bowsers, you know, from the where you put your gas in. And he walked straight across to me and he literally put his head under my hand. And I thought, this beloved is clearing energy for me. This I understood immediately. And as he cleared it, I cleared it with him. This was all done silently. And I started to get a sense of what was going on with this energy exchanges. So for a long while, when I used to be working with others, because, you know, my love is, my own work is facial harmony and integral touch. which is all this body work, but the majority of the work's done on your face. So it's really a touch and sensitivity and conscious aging. There's a whole lot of pieces to it. But I would put my hands on somebody on the table and I would realize, oh, that wasn't in me a moment ago. I would take my hands off and I would start to sense what these flows of energy were. So I used to have a big crystal that lived under my table till I grew into whatever this is. And I used to put it under the moon and do all this. But as I matured, all of that just stopped. Mm-hmm. There's just nothing in me that feels I need. I mean, this was to support me. I've never been somebody that could relate to I need to protect myself from somebody else. I mean, to me, that's a concept that's already in division. And it would hurt my heart to have that be present in me. So to me, it's like, I don't understand, how can God, goddess, existence, how can I protect myself from myself? Because that's, because whoever is in front of me is also myself. Right. So so sometimes I notice, I'll be in an environment, there's a lot of hostility or anger, and often it's that unconscious, the 13 picks up those deeper, unconscious, subconscious places in another. And I feel like if they land in me, that's my service today. If they're still there, if I take a breath and they're still there, I just drop in and just surrender to it so that it clears. To me, the deeper service is the moment to moment work and anywhere that I am. And then it just moves through. And if it doesn't move through, then I've got something to look at.
It's so interesting. Thank you for saying that, because when I hear you speak, I'm looking at your nodes and you have 52 is your south node and 58 is your north node on both sides. And as you're saying, I just drop in. It's like you become that mountain, you become that 52, you find your inner stillness, and suddenly, the stress and the dissatisfaction from these two programming partners dissolve, and suddenly you are in the stillness, and you can go up to like your vitality is back, your bliss is there. It's like you're tapping into your north node and just weaving in the stillness of the south node on both sides. Like it's so beautiful.
A long time ago I learned Tonglen, from the Buddhist tradition, where you breathe in whatever illness or negativity or whatever is in the field. And I remember hearing this discourse. I can't remember who it was. It was maybe one that Almas did with his students, because I did some work with the Diamond Approach and a lot with the Diamond Logos School. And I remember this lady saying, but what if I get sick? Maybe it was one of the lamas, but what if I get sick? If I take in all that negative energy, and whoever it was, I think it was a lama, said, well, then you'll know it works. And I thought, this is the fear base, that what if I breathe that in and I get sick? So it shows us our attachments to the lower vibration rather than our trust in it. If I breathe that in and I hold it in love and I send it back out in that same way, then there is that beautiful recycle. And for my experience of life is, nothing can survive in the field of love except love. And I'm a redhead, I'm fiery. I'm a Highlander, I'm from Scotland, I'm from the Northeast actually. There's lots of cosmic fire in here, and I have a really good rant when I'm triggered, but it's mine. Somebody didn't cause it. There's nobody to blame. I might want to say to my partner, I so want you to be responsible for this. I'm so cranky right now, because obviously, there was an agreement. I expected an outcome. The outcome wasn't the outcome I wanted. So now I'm whatever inside. But there's a kind of beauty to that too, because every trigger or defense is a gift that comes back, that in the center of it, there is more seeding of the whatever city. And to me, all the cities they're perfect streams and seeds of dimensions of love. We tend to think of love as this one thing rather than all the different qualities of love. So there is something really beautiful in listening to that. And I just got over myself faster, basically, Bella. You know, it's like I learned to process the past, really take in the gift, and there's nothing to hang on. There's nothing to hang on to, except be here.
Yeah, you know, when you speak, I feel this thing how we always say that the profile is hologenetic and you can look wherever you look. So now I'm like, I'm looking at your, what I can see as the inner marriage. I'm looking at the sign Venus, which is the SQ, and I'm looking at the sign Saturn, which is the stability. And for you, they're both 6 lines. So that's the, for me, the 6th line is a little bit, you know, you say love is all the, when I hear you speak, I hear like, love is all the colors of the rainbow. You know, love is not one thing. It's the 6th line. Once you've gone through all the lines, you come to love. And, you know, that's what I see there. And then you have the 43 and the 44, which is also beautiful. It kind of, you know, the 43 is your SQ and the 44 is your stability. And then it's the insight and the synarchy. So there's some kind, like, you know, it's like the insight of seeing the synarchy in not being pushing away anything and knowing that all has like all it has its part in the bigger picture. And that's that the 6th line can overview all that in love, you know. So it's like I look there and I see what you say and it's in there. And that's for what I see. You were saying something about seeding. What I see with Venus and Saturn is like that is the seed of your whole, you know, that's where you first come from, and that is the 6th line. So to have that inside your inner marriage and also as your life's work, I see is, you know, the 6th line. Yeah, I would like to hear something for you, like the 6th line for you. What is it to be a 6th line being for you, and especially to have it like in the smallest part and also in the most obvious, which is your life's work.
Well, I think, you know, it's like anything, it's had a lot of challenges because clearly I've most of my life felt that I'm sort of standing on the outside in some way, and that my views were often so different from what I was hearing around me. And it was hard for me to get involved in certain things, you know, in dramas or, you know, at school, there's always those little cliques of somebody's talking to this girl and they're not talking to that girl, and somebody's on the inner and somebody's on the outer. And obviously with a 43-23, there is a deep rebellious part to my nature in a way. So I would always be there with whoever they were not friends with this week. But there was a loneliness in me. You know, there was a loneliness of feeling I'm part, but I'm not part. And the music was my savior. You know, I was invited, I first sang in a band, I think when I was 13. So up until, you know, I was 17, that was all of my life. And that really gave me a focus and a joy of how to express. And I think I learned to express emotionally through the songs. So that kept me engaged. But when I look at it in lots of ways now, I feel that, well, the listening part of the 6th line, you know, with the 13, seeing as we're in the 13th day, that's how I found Richard. You know, Venus transited in 2004, and I was writing a new program for my work. And I had this real sense, I'll remember where I was. I was lying on a sofa, actually, in Scotland, writing this. And then I was living in Cologne at the time, so I was back in Cologne. And I kept asking, where is that energy? Where did that energy land? And I was searching and driving my friends crazy, like she's really, you know, she's lost it now for sure. What on earth is she talking about, you know? And then somebody gave me this little book like this. And at the bottom it said, it was a human design book, you know, Richard's little book with the circuits. Yeah. And on the bottom, there was one name, and I went, that's it. And they said, oh, you're looking for a human design? No, I'm not looking for human design, but that's a human design book. I knew nothing at that time. So I went online, searched, and I found Gene Keys in the UK. I think it was like the week before he gave his first Venus sequence transmission in the UK. I was the only person there that didn't know anybody. People said to me, well, how did you find us? Well, I just followed the energy.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I could see these people look at me thinking, you know, who on earth is this crazy woman, you know? But, you know, here we are. But everything in me knew something has landed that, you know, and that's maybe the projector, the 6-2 projector. We, you know, that the 6 line is all about what's coming and what we need. You know, we need this transmission. We need the human design, and it was perfect, and it is perfect, and there are foundational pieces that I think are awesome. And then I feel like for me, you know, that the keys, the transmission morphed into this mystery that will take us even further in a different kind of holding environment.
Right.
And to me, it's all inclusive. You know, it's, and I just see them as streams of consciousness that are inviting. And when I sit in, I feel them open up the Merkaba while I'm sitting behind one. And sometimes I need that, but I feel that every transmission, you know, every new transformation, transcendent nature that moves through my system, every download, it's like I see the star pearl Merkaba, but the communal one start to light up more fully every moment we're doing our inner work. You know, so for me, that maybe doesn't sound like a 6 line, but for me, there is, I would say in the 13, you know, there is permissiveness and narrow-minded. And I would say my biggest fault in narrow-mindedness was when people just don't get it. I can be really, what's wrong with them? Why don't they get it? And it took me a long time to realize and release this intolerance of the 6 line.
Right.
But that all inclusiveness, that we're all on a journey home, where we are, the solar plexus is inviting us to heal ourselves from the melodrama, to find that deeper wisdom, and to come back to wholeness. And to me, that's the 6 line vision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, is there anything else you would like to add about the 13, or about your chart, or about the journey?
I was thinking about it before we talked, and you know, one of the things I really see sometimes this is more of a global thing. You know, I live in Australia. I've almost lived, I think I've maybe lived here longer now than in any other country. So it's my home, and I feel it as, you know, I'm welcomed by the land. And at the same time, we have a very powerful Indigenous community that is still waiting, and for some of them to be recognized. You know, this deep ancestral trauma that exists in people, and some are able to just maybe overcome it, or maybe not as deeply in touch with it as some of the elders are here. And I feel that there is a possibility of those of us who have these qualities that can lend our hearts to collective healing, that we can start to assist this. Mm-hmm. And as a Scot, you know, if you would have talked to me as a teenager and said, you know, that we were going to fight at the border tomorrow, I would have gone and got a claymore, because the ancestral memory was so powerfully present in my field. You know, and to me, you know, I see it in this politics, you know, in the UK, of Scotland didn't vote for leaving the EU, for example, and they try to go for independence, but it doesn't work. And so Scotland, England, and Ireland are still, there are things in there where they're not at peace and they're not happy for a big portion of the community. And for me, it's this ancestral wounding. It's you cannot have interdependent nation unless you heal the oppression. Mm-hmm. You know, because these are oppressed people, and there's deep ancestral pain in there. So to come to unity of any description, there is a need for us to pay some attention to this deep ancestral healing around the world. And I think those of us who, I just feel it's part of my job, you know, that's part of the job description existence has given me. So I just, on days when I'm meditating, you know, just breathe in that wounding, that maybe in our own silence we can assist in some way.
That's so beautiful. And so I also wanted to know if people want to contact you, and what is it, because speaking about that modality that you're doing, but what is it that you do and how can people find you?
I'll give you my email. I have got a facial harm. I have a facial harmony page on Facebook, which there is almost nothing on it. I am the worst social media marketer in the universe. I have to get better. I need some assistance. But yeah, so
that is with the 64 doors what we want to do, because I think many of us, I was recently in a group with the Gene Key ambassadors, and we were seeing we met 5 times to see how to create a website actually, and to see that is kind of secondary. We are all about the transmission, but then about the technicalities of it, it seems to be, you know, not the priority, but we understand that it is important. So for us with the 64 doors, that's also because Ashley, who I'm working with, she's very good at actually that part, so that we can all find that collaboration instead of division, instead of discord, to find a way of actually, you know, supporting ourselves, the teamwork as well of the 44, to be like, I'm good at this, you're good at that, let's come together, you know.
That's a fabulous thing, and I want to really congratulate you on the 64 doors. The first time I saw it, it just brought a big smile to my face. I thought, this is just magical. You can feel, I felt the juiciness of the enthusiasm and the energy behind it. It was so welcoming. I think you guys have done a great job. It was really great.
Thank you. Yeah, the enthusiasm. We have the 16th, both of us, and then for me, I guess also it's like, you know, the 61, the 16th, and the 4th line is just want everybody to be happy together, you know.
No, it's really good. I loved it, and you know, I feel very like the last 10 years I've spent a lot of time in Japan, and I work with the most fabulous team over there. It's just gorgeous. And now, of course, I work so much with Jinkies, as you say, with Richard and Sally and Anton and Elijah. And, you know, we are just so easy and in tune with each other. And we're very authentic. You know, if something's going on and that discord comes in, you know, for me, I really relate to it as that of a different heart. You know, there's just a discordant note there for me. And what I really notice is sometimes with that discordant note, all I need is to hear something, you know, it's being open-hearted then, to hear something from somebody else in the team. And then I go, oh, it's gone now. I just needed to hear it in another way or be open to it, you know, and sometimes just stand on my little flat feet and go, no. You know, and that's the challenge also in a team, is to really be with each other in our authenticity and our individuality, and also to find solution, because there is always a solution, spoken like a real 3rd line core wound.
And also, I guess this is a little sneak peek into the Star Pearl, because I can see that your sphere of relating is 34. So that is that lightheartedness and that open heart. And then it makes the code and ring of purification with your life's work. So 13 and 30. So you have that, you know, in your Star Pearl. I can see also why it's like, okay, it just purifies and then it's fine again. So it's beautiful to be part of that team.
And it also shows beautifully those years when the shadows were so powerful to be worked through, you know. And I think that's one of the things I loved about my experience of, you know, as a sannyasin, is the thing I loved about Osho is that nothing was sacred and everything was sacred.
Right.
And I think for me, it was that lifting the lid on all of these conditionings and sexualities and religions. And, you know, it touched me so deeply. I actually won a Bible prize twice when I was at school, you know, and it's kind of a funny thing in my family that my siblings often say, yeah, it was because of you we had to go to Sunday school. I wanted, seemingly as a very small child, I said to my mother, I have to go and see Jesus. And my father said, where on earth is she getting that? Mother said, don't look at me. It's not me she's getting it from. And then pretty soon I was arguing with the minister, you know, well, that doesn't make any sense. You know? So there was that nature of, I had to take, if you like, I took God out of the church. I feel I don't know how else to say it. To me, there's Christianity and churchianity, and they're not the same thing, you know. And I find it everywhere. This view that you need some secular validation, which I started to not need. Like in my own direct experience is all that is required, and yet I've probably been in every church and synagogue and mosque and Hindu temple that I can possibly find, lighting candles or joss sticks or whatever. Because to me, it's all the divine presence, and that's part of that listening too, I think. Or maybe it's just my own craziness, but if it is, I like it, and I'm going to stick to it.
I feel like I can feel your attraction there, you know, the magnetism, the love of humanity in that 15. And then the first line that, you know, you go to the bottom with it and you come up with your own bold view of like, what is the love of humanity? What is the love of God? You know, it's beautiful.
This is what a gorgeous way. I mean, I also should say that saying yes to this time in the morning, I realized this was permissiveness. All of your crazy hours, you said yes to this again. What a delight. I'm so grateful that you were so busy tomorrow, and what a lovely way to enter the day that I was born onto this planet. Thank you, Bella. Really sweet.
Yeah, thank you so much for making this possible. And with the crazy hours, like we were on the other side of time difference yesterday, and now we're on this side of time difference, and it happened. We made it happen.
For us. Lovely. Thank you.
I wish you the best birthday. 65. Wow, I said like you look like 22.
Thank you. You're definitely my person of the day for that statement. I'm going to have breakfast with my girlfriend now and our dogs. So
Oh, yeah. Well, big thank you.
Thank you, and wishing you beautiful days and much success with all of this, because it's magic.
Thank you. Bye-bye.